afternoon and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland and this week's Full Scottish. My name is Isla Barker. With me I have Linda Fabiani, the former presiding officer of Holyrood. Hello.
Hello there, Isla.
Hi, very nice to meet you. Thank you for coming on to the show.
Pleasure.
So, let's see. Yes, to start, we have our Ukraine update. So Russia has hammered Ukraine with missiles and drones on Saturday, killing 6 people and inflicting damage across several regions of the country, Ukrainian officials said. Volodymyr Zelensky said Russian forces targeted energy infrastructure but also damaged residential buildings, schools and businesses. 15 people were injured. The Ukrainian president said the Sumy, Kharkiv, Dnipro and Mykolaiv regions were also targeted in an attack that included about 430 drones and 68 missiles, most of which were downed by air defenses. A Russian strike later in the afternoon on a residential area in the Zaporizhzhia suburbs killed 1 and wounded 18, including 2 children, the local administration said. Russia's winter attacks on Ukraine have left swaths of the major cities without power or heating, part of a campaign to weaken resolve as Moscow's troops press a battlefield offensive and demand Kyiv cede more territory in the east. Saturday's attack also prompted NATO member Poland to scramble jets to protect its airspace, but no violations were observed. Zelensky repeated his call for Kyiv's partners to boost production of air defense weapons, stocks of which have been diminishing as the US and its allies in the Gulf fending off Iranian strikes. Russian air defense units downed 65 Ukrainian drones headed for Moscow throughout this day on Saturday, the city's major Sergei Sobyanin said. And for our Middle East update, the death toll in Gaza continues to rise with a total of 72,239 Palestinians killed yes, Linda,
Okay.
so what do you make of the continuing conflict in Ukraine?
And so it goes on. And
Yes,
it's interesting. I think we're going to talk about Gaza as well. And because these things are all part of the greater whole now, aren't they,
of
Isla?
course,
It's
yeah.
just, yeah, everything affects everything else. And Mr. Zelensky must be seriously worried about the fact that Ukraine has fallen off the agenda.
Yes.
But not just him, but those round about. I mean, there's Poland. We heard that they felt obliged. You just told us to scramble some stuff to have in the air just in case of attack, which came to nothing.
Yes, of course, but
But
it is better to be
uh,
prepared.
absolutely, I mean, the countries round about Ukraine and Russia's neighbours must be worried sick that while Ukraine is not top of the agenda, Putin will probably feel that he has free license to do lots of things. The other thing that I'm finding really interesting about Ukraine is that we seem to have Western powers, including the US, and some of the countries in the Middle East, looking to learn from Ukraine about the interception of drones, etc., and drone technology. Um, so it's a really weird thing. It turns out that Ukraine could end up helping other countries in their struggle, whilst they must feel rather neglected. I mean, the talks that were supposed to go on trilaterally with Russia, America, and Ukraine haven't happened because I think the US decided they should be held in America and Russia refused to attend. So it's now back in the hands of the US, which is always worrying, in my opinion, to decide whether they will move the talks. But Zelensky, his government, Ukrainians generally, must be feeling really, really neglected. Terrible, terrible situation. And if we're going on to talk about the Middle East, it all ties in together.
Exactly. We are on day 1,481 of the conflict, and
Cecil?
I'm sure Ukrainians are feeling very exhausted and in low morale of this, um, length of the war. So yes, to our Middle East update, the death toll in Gaza continues to rise with a total of 72,239 Palestinians killed and 171,861 injured since 7th October 2023. Since the October 2025 ceasefire, 663 Palestinians have been killed and 1,762 have been injured. Gaza is largely being ignored by the media as the world's media shifts its attention to the US and Israeli war on Iran. Despite this attention, we remain unclear about the objectives and Trump's changing goalposts about what victory looks like. Could boots on the ground become part of the US and Israel's plans? Linda, what do you think?
Who knows? I mean, I think that's the problem. There doesn't seem to be any strategy from the Trump administration at all, other than helping the Zionists in Israel. Lots of tactics, but tactics without an overall strategy aren't worth a toss. But of course, as you said during your report, because of everything that's going on in Iran and beyond, and this crazy action of, in my opinion, Trump in support of Netanyahu, Gaza is being ignored. And we just don't hear anything about it. You actually have to physically go and look up news about Gaza these days and what's happening. Yeah, which I did. People are still being killed, as you reported. Another thing that I came up with when I was having my daily look is it was one of the human rights organisations, I can't remember which one, which have reported that over 90% of the cemeteries in Gaza have been razed. They've disappeared. Now,
So
that might
no
not
evidence.
sound as horrendous as people being killed, but it's about the absolute erasure of a culture. It's like changing history. It's like, there's no cemeteries here, therefore they didn't exist, therefore the Palestinian people didn't exist here.
Yeah.
It's an absolute genocide. Meanwhile, what's happening in the West Bank, under cover of Iran, there's people being killed all the time in the West Bank. There's livestock being taken away. There's further land being grabbed. And in fact, the Zionists in Israel are absolutely blatant about it. I was horrified by the huge digital poster they put up that said, "Thank you, God and Donald Trump." Seriously.
They are in each other's pockets, it
It's
seems.
horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it is destruction. Oh, sorry.
No, carry on, Isla. I will just rant on about this.
I was saying about the cemeteries, it is destruction of evidence. So then,
Yeah.
should there, in an ideal world, be a time when Netanyahu and the IDF are held accountable for this genocide, that they can argue that there is little to no evidence because they have destroyed it?
Yeah. And they systematically carry on doing it, and they are allowed to do it with the backing of the biggest power in the world currently, which is the US. And, when we spoke earlier about how all these things tie in, I know it's a cliche, but it's almost like a George Orwell novel.
Yeah.
And we're going to end up with Putin on one side of the world and Trump on another, or Trump and whoever his successors are, because I think they're all to be worried about at the moment, seem to be ruling the show. These two big powers that get everything their own way, and everybody else just has to go along with them. So, I mean, that was why I was really pleased that John Swinney said yesterday. I understand I wasn't there, but I've read the reports that he said, as far as he was concerned, if he was in charge in an independent Scotland, there would be no use by the US or anybody else of air bases, etc.
Of course, yeah, like Prestwick. Yeah.
Yeah. But that's not helping any situation currently, I'm afraid.
Of course, yeah. As you said earlier, I definitely have heard a lot less about Gaza and even Iran on social media. I have heard the occasional post or such, but it is, not as prevalent as coverage was before the start. I mean, at the start of the war in Gaza.
Yeah. Isn't it terrible when societies, including our own societies and individuals, become inured to the thought of people dying every day in the world?
It's like
inured
desensitized.
To the thought of children being blown up. I mean, that school in Iran that was blown up with 120 wee lasses killed.
Yes.
It came as a bit of news and it disappeared as a bit of news. And we should be absolutely horrified by that.
Yes. Then this goes beyond the news cycle. Yeah.
Yeah.
So moving on to the UK cost of living. With the ongoing war in Iran, the cost of living has sharply increased. Fuel prices, energy bills, mortgage rates, and food have risen in price due to the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz in the Gulf mainly. Rachel Reeves has said profiteering from oil companies will not be tolerated during this time of uncertainty. Analysts estimate that every $10 increase in the price of oil increases fuel prices at the pump by 7 pence. Mortgage rates for 2-year deals have risen by 5.04% as well. Linda, ahead of John Swinney's announcement of a £10,000 assistance deal for young people buying their first home, do you think this will become less feasible with mortgage rates rising during this conflict?
Oh, now that's a big question. I think prices are going to rise because I think it's unavoidable. Everyone keeps saying, when will Trump stop this war? And he changes his mind by the day. It may be if he sees his own power in danger of slipping away that, he will stop the war, because I think it's all self-motivated. I don't believe there's any greater purpose in any of it. So yes, prices are going to rise. Cost of living is going to get harder. To relate that to the potential grant to first-time buyers, I'm waiting for more detail on that, Isla. I come from a housing background many years ago, and I have read that they are talking about an equity share by government, an increasing equity share, which basically means they've done projects like this before which have worked rather well. But this one seems to be that a £10,000 grant towards the deposit of a house. If the house is sold further down the line, whatever that 10,000 is worth, the government gets back. I mean, that makes sense with public money. However, I'm a wee bit concerned about schemes elsewhere in the world that have given grants to first-time buyers, that the unforeseen effects, one of which is that the price of houses rises because everybody knows there's £10,000 there for the first-time buyer.
Yes.
So houses of a certain type, the prices get dearer. So I'd be interested to see the detail in how the government works with that and how they avoid that happening. On the bigger picture of that, yes, whilst it might help people initially, it has to be done very, very carefully. My own view, I think it has to be done in the round. I think the whole thing about the new housing agency that's been announced, again, it was really interesting to see the detail of that. I'd like to see more of an emphasis on social housing.
Oh, yes.
Council housing, housing associations. Because one of my big concerns about housing is that it's used as an investment tool, and it shouldn't be. It should be about homes, not investments, homes for people. And I don't like the way that social housing has become stigmatised. It's almost like welfare housing, housing of last resort. It shouldn't be. I think people should have the choice whether to rent or whether to buy, and they should be of equal value. So I think there's a lot more to be done than just giving first-time buyer grants.
Of course. And do you have any ideas of how the SNP could support people during this increasing cost of living crisis?
Well, there are limitations under a devolved settlement. There are always limitations. I mean, it's just recently that we've had the UK government openly admitting in a memo that they're going to carry on with their policies regardless of what the devolved administrations think of anything. However, what I would say is I think the SNP government in Scotland has done a lot of good things despite the limitations that have been imposed by devolution. For example, the child payment, which is the only one in the UK that's done like that. And I think it was the Joseph Rowntree Foundation who, in their reports, said that in Scotland, the reduction of child poverty was way ahead of anywhere else in the UK because of the Scottish child payment. So, and I think too, if you look at the wider policies that the SNP government has brought in, like no tuition fees, for example, free prescriptions, done away with peak rail fares. There's new initiatives about bus fares, public transport in general. I think they have done rather well, but we have to remember it's all about mitigation. All we can do is mitigate the excesses of the Westminster government. We aren't really able to do the big infrastructure changes that would make such a difference.
I see. So moving on to the assisted dying bill.
Yeah.
Oh yes, and also growth in GDP can be impacted whether the government is devolved or independent, I'm sure.
Yeah. Though I generally have concerns, as I know some in the Scottish Government have had, and others, about GDP being the measure that's always used, gross domestic product always being the measure that's used. Scotland does rather well, despite our only having devolution in that. But I remember, I think it was Nicola Sturgeon that started it, actually, after many, many years of lobbying by many of us about giving more of an emphasis on the well-being economy. And Kate Forbes has tied that in as well in her time with her financial forecasting. Well-being can be much more important than the very stark GDP figure, because you can have a high GDP and still have levels of poverty that are not acceptable. So it should be about the well-being of everyone as far as possible.
I agree, yes. I mean, for example, the United States has one of the highest GDPs in the world, but it also has the highest incarceration rate, child poverty rates, and
Well, there you are. Excellent
reliance,
point.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I mean, Donald Trump boasts about how wealthy the US is, but not everyone in the US is wealthy.
No. The statistics are fairly worrying when you look at the US and across all measures of how such things are
Yes.
measured, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah.
Yes, they consistently score the lowest in several factors. So now moving on to
Mm-hmm.
the assisted dying bill. The assisted dying bill has been debated in Holyrood over the last few days, with MSP sitting in Parliament on a Friday, which is unusual. 175 amendments have been made to the bill, which would allow terminally ill patients to choose assisted dying. Some of the amendments include a 6-month prognosis for patients, assessments being made in private by a doctor to ensure that this is the patient's own decision and there is no coercion, mandating doctors asking the patient's local authority if they have received social care in the past, and palliative and hospice care must be discussed with the patient before making a decision. Linda, why do you think it has taken so long for this bill to have reached an agreement in Holyrood?
If it even does reach an agreement, I,
Well,
I
yes, of
don't.
course.
Yeah, I don't know how it's going to go. I think it's Tuesday. It's the final vote
I
on
think
that.
so,
So
yeah.
it's the amendments that have taken so long. This is the third time that Holyrood have debated assisted dying. I was party to it twice. Whilst I was there, there was two different bills came forward. One by Margot MacDonald. The late Margot MacDonald was the first as an independent MSP to bring it forward. And Patrick Harvey, a Green member, brought forward, I think it was Patrick, yeah, brought forward the second one. So this is the third. It's a very emotive subject. There's lots of different views come into it. You have the religious view. There are those of particular faith persuasions who will not agree to it. I have to say though, there are also those who have faith who would agree to it. So it's not clear cut. And just because someone doesn't have a faith and is not religious doesn't mean they would automatically support such a bill. There's lots of anomalies. I mean, a lot of people think, for example, that if someone is in agreement with a woman's right to choose over abortion and stuff, they would automatically opt to support assisted dying. That's not the case either. So there's myriad points of view when you look at legislation like this. And all parties have always said that these are matters of conscience and that it is up to the individuals. So such votes do not get whipped, to use the terminology. People make their own minds up. That's why it takes so long. It's a difficult one. People have genuine concerns on both sides. So people are concerned that folk have what is often referred to in the catch-all phrase of dignity in dying, ability to make their own choices. But then you also have people who worry about coercion, who worry about, for example, if we pass this legislation, is it a bit of a slippery slope and it becomes easier? And the thing is, you can look at examples internationally that back up both of these kinds of concerns. So one side can quote something from perhaps Oregon that says nothing you should worry about. And there's others who would quote, I think it's Ontario, certainly somewhere in Canada, where you'd say, well, look at this, there are things to worry about. So that's why it takes so long. And it should. I have no problem with it taking so long because I think this is an extremely important thing, and these decisions certainly should not be taken lightly.
Have some unexpected consequences. Do you think... Oh, Linda, you've frozen. I think your connection might be a bit dodgy. Okay. Sure. Yes. Okay, sure. So with the aftermath of the fire in Glasgow Central train station is still being felt, with an estimated 71 businesses in the surrounding area being damaged. During his speech at the SNP National Conference in Edinburgh yesterday, First Minister John Swinney announced £1 million will be underwritten to support the demolition of the remaining facade of the building, meaning the local authority will not have to pay the bill. The Scottish Government will also raise contributions in their hardship relief grant scheme from 75% to 95%. Yes. Okay. Yes. So last Sunday was there was a devastating fire in the historic building surrounding the Glasgow Central train station. The building had been there for over 100 years and was destroyed by a fire in a neighbouring shop, potentially caused by a lithium battery, but the causes are not fully verified yet. So businesses have been recovering from this. For example, the coffee shop just below, known as Sexy Coffee, has been making customers aware of a scam that was circulating recently of some impersonators setting up a relief fund account, which was false. So, should you donate to any of these businesses in their time of need, please be vigilant. So the government has. John Swinney has expressed concerns over the Glasgow Central fire and how they will work together to rebuild this historic building and restore travel into the busiest train station in Scotland. So First Minister John Swinney said at the conference, there has been a significant disruption for people and businesses as a result of the devastating fire at Union Corner, including through the closure of Glasgow Central Station. As I made clear in the immediate aftermath of the fire, the Scottish Government is absolutely committed to working closely with Glasgow City Council to ensure financial support is available. Travel to the low level of Glasgow Central has resumed, but high level is said to not be open until at least next Wednesday. So I would advise continuing to check travel updates. Right. Linda is still... I'm sorry, it appears that our guest, Linda Fabiani, has disappeared. I think there is an issue with connection on her end. So, yes, we are working to get her back at this time. Yes. Yes, so please stand by during these technical difficulties. Hello, if you're tuning in right now, this is Broadcasting Scotland's full Scottish segment from our new studio in Stirling. I'm your host, Isla Barker, and our guest, Linda Fabiani, is still disconnected from us, I'm afraid, so apologies for those technical difficulties. Okay. So in the support for the Glasgow Central train station fire, the discretionary non-domestic rates of the hardship relief fund from the government is normally 75%, but now it has been increased to 95% during this event of the damage of a very historic building. So 75% is normally funded by the Scottish Government and 25% by the local authority that is relevant. However, because of this only 5% bill footed towards the local authority, this will reduce pressure on the council to fund this recovery project for the Glasgow Central train station, and is less likely to take money away from public services such as social care and road improvement. So the Scottish Government has initiated the Bellwyn scheme to support Glasgow City Council with immediate demolition work of the facade as it is too damaged to be sustained and must be demolished for public safety. The work is taking place to finalise arrangements for the grant scheme. Okay. Oh, it appears that Linda is coming back to us just over the phone. Hello, Linda, can you hear me?
I can. Was it something I said? You just thought getting rid of her.
Oh, of course not. Okay, well, I'm glad to see you're back. I mean, you know, what's a show without a bit of technical difficulties? So we were just speaking about the fire. So
All right.
There has been great support from the government. £1 million is going to be underwritten, so the local authority is not going to have to foot the bill. What do you think of this, and will it be feasible for the government to fund this?
I think it's 10 million, John Swinney said. I think.
No. Oh, sorry. It's 1 million underwritten for the demolition of the facade, and £10 million to help the businesses recover. Yes.
Ah, right. Okay. I missed your earlier contribution.
Oh, sorry.
Well, if John Swinney has said that.
Oh, Linda, you've frozen again.
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
I did. I don't know why I keep freezing.
You're okay now.
It's not Botox, honestly. It's it's screen. Yeah, if John Swinney has said that's the case, if he's First Minister after the election, of course he will keep his word, because that's very Swinney. That's what he does. So is it enough? No, there are issues about old buildings. When you look at the buildings in Glasgow, there's a certain type of construction of its time, which timber frame construction almost. That sounds like a modern thing, but back in Victorian times, timber frames were used, and then the sandstone. I mean, when you even look at the art school, which sadly we lost, the Macintosh building, that also, I understand, had timber framing. So there are issues there. If it goes up big style. So it's the age of a lot of these buildings, but it's also ownership patterns and things. I think there are big issues. It's not just in Glasgow. It's everywhere. To use an example, the Egyptian halls in Union Street that everybody wants redone, and there's a potential compulsory purchase going on there so as that building can be saved. But the difficulties about ownership. Compulsory purchase isn't particularly easy for councils to carry out.
Of course not.
I think that the Scottish Government had a working group recently to look at the potential of how compulsory purchase could be made easier and best used. So it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that. So there are big issues there. And yes, the 10, 11 million, whatever, will go a long way in this particular case to that iconic building, corner of Union Street. But it's a wider problem. Yeah.
So speaking of the First Minister, yesterday was the SNP National Conference at the Edinburgh International Conference Centre. The SNP announced reforms to teaching, childcare and housing. So Linda, John Swinney announced as he described, a transformational childcare policy covering children in Scotland from 9 months old to the end of primary school. And we would see families benefit from £1,400 up to and over £11,000 dependent on need. So with all these big promises and everything, do you think that this could be feasible, or do you have any ideas for any changes that could be made to these policies, if any?
Well, of course it's feasible. I mean, Swinney doesn't announce things lightly. So he must have done the backup here. And again, it'll be interesting to see the detail. I mean, it's an important thing. When you look at successful countries in Northern Europe, for example, the Scandinavian countries who have excellent childcare, which is just taken as something normal, the state having a responsibility. So you look at that, and that goes into the wider picture about economic activity and everything else. It is a good thing. It is an important thing. Uh, However, the big difference is that these countries are small, independent countries that can make their own decisions in relation to what they do with their economy. We don't have that advantage. So what will be carried out with us has to be looked at in terms of devolution. Of course, what I would really like to see is that this election brings us independence and that we can then make proper decisions. So
Of course.
that'll be
So,
what John Swinney's hoping for too.
so then there was also a landmark deal for teachers. So Scotland's teachers are going to benefit from fully funded classroom hours reduction. So a weekly reduction of 90 minutes to be introduced on a phased basis, benefiting from August 2027 if the SNP is re-elected. The scheme also includes 40 million in 2026 to 2027 for the recruitment of additional teachers required to deliver the change. And further funding will be provided from 2027 to 2028. And the Education Secretary, Jenny Gilruth, said that avoiding industrial action was essential, particularly at this critical time when pupils are preparing for their exams. This agreement ensures that any potential disruption to their learning has been averted. Now, while higher education and secondary education is quite different, there have been announcements of strikes or previous strikes in recent years from universities such as the University of Stirling and the University of Dundee. So how do you think the government, the SNP or the Scottish government just should, the elections hold a different result, support universities during a very financially tumultuous time?
Yeah. Well, that's a big question. And I'm scrabbling around here for an answer because I don't have an answer on that, I have to say. Um, I think we have to remember that each university operates almost like a business. You know, they are not entirely publicly funded. And some of the reports we've seen from various higher learning institutions have been somewhat concerning. So the Funding Council has been doing a lot of work, I know, with colleges, and they seem to be getting to the end of some of that. So I think while government has a responsibility in the bigger picture, there's also a responsibility in individual institutions in further and higher education, and everyone should be working together. When you also look at secondary schooling, and I think Jenny Gilruth's done a good job here, what we should never forget is that in Scotland, we have avoided public sector strikes hugely in comparison to what's happened in the rest of the UK. Whether it be the medical profession or whether it be the teaching profession and others, Scotland has actually done very, very well. And when you look at some of the salaries for public service, Scotland punches above its weight in terms of looking after our public servants. So whilst we don't often see the reports of these things, and it's all doom and gloom with the negative mainstream press and media, the reality is that the Scottish Government has operated these things very, very well compared to elsewhere in the UK. So well done, Jenny Gilruth, for avoiding the teacher strikes, which would badly affect young people at this time. I think working together with the trade unions and the professionals has really paid off here. And of course, Jenny was a teacher herself in secondary schools, so she knows the pressures that teachers face. As far as the universities and even the colleges are concerned, there's still a bit of work to do there. And I know that that's ongoing. So.
Of course. And there is a growing debate on whether tuition fees should still be free for Scottish students at Scottish universities. I, for one, believe very strongly in free tuition fees. It makes education accessible.
Yep.
But of course, this requires a lot of public funding. So with all this extra funding towards it. Oh yes, of course. Like in England, they've increased the fees, which were already quite high. So how do you think the SNP can still adequately fund education, especially higher education, without needing to resort to increases in tuition fees or further layoffs of staff, reduced funding, which would cause layoffs of staff?
Well, I like you, Isla, believe fundamentally that education is for everyone, not just for those who can afford it. And of course, if there are tuition fees, it puts some people off even the very thought of going to university or college. So I totally support that. It's about political choices, and it's political choices that the SNP have taken. Now, one of the issues about that is I know that universities in particular feel very, very strongly that they are disadvantaged because of this. So that's where everyone's got to work together. I believe those who run our university sector and our further education sector generally should totally buy into the free tuition fees for Scottish students. And they should work together with the government to make sure that this maintains. Because it's fundamentally important. We talked earlier about the bigger picture, about childcare and everything else, how that feeds into the better economy, how that becomes a well-being economy. And tuition, free tuition for anybody who wishes to have it, is part of that wider well-being economy. An educated nation, a nation that can work, is so very, very important. So from the early days of childcare and nursery education, right through to apprenticeship education, college education, university education is extremely important, and everybody involved in it should be working towards that end.
Excellent. And yes, and what about other parties? Do you think their policies towards education and tuition fees, do you think they could be as effective, or do you think they need quite a bit of work? And if so, who?
Well, I'm trying to think. I don't particularly know an awful lot about other parties' policies, I have to say. I know that the Greens agree with the SNP, or they did the last time I looked, certainly. The Tories have never agreed on free education. Labour, not sure. Because on one hand you get Anna Sarwar saying they're sort of independent from Westminster. But it was the Labour Party that brought in tuition fees in the first place. It was Tony Blair's government, if I remember rightly. Well, we all know that Scottish Labour is just a branch office, so they go along with what happens down south. So I wouldn't trust them with anything. The Lib Dems, it was the Lib Dem Labour government in Scotland that implemented, it was called the graduate endowment. So what they were saying was they tried to say that tuition was free, but people still had to pay back once they had work. They had to pay back their tuition fees. So it wasn't free education at all. It was the SNP that brought it in 2007. So no, I don't trust any of the UK parties at all when it comes to this.
And it was announced that for businesses in the Highlands and Islands, there would be a 100% business rate reduction. So councils do heavily rely on business rates for funding as well as council tax. How do you think already financially stretched councils are going to sustain themselves in the Highlands and Islands if they do not have business rate funding?
Well, I know that I don't know all the detail, Isla, but I know that Kate Forbes recently announced special measures for the Highlands and Islands. I don't know the detail of it, but there are big issues in the Highlands and Islands, not just the vast area that's covered and the very particular issues that Highland areas and the islands have, but there's also a population draw to the cities that's been going on for years. And again, that's one of the things when you look at Scotland as part of the UK compared to what we could be as an independent nation. It makes all the difference because the figures actually show that Scotland is way at the bottom of the scale in population growth. It's independent countries, the Scandinavian countries again, and even Ireland, their population has grown over the years. So that tells you something. The UK is not working for Scotland. So, yes, there's an issue. Of course there is. There's an issue for all councils. And when we're talking of cost of living increases and trying to mitigate the problems that Westminster cause, it's not easy for any government in Scotland. But again, it's all about everyone working together. People have to work together and recognise that we have common issues. That has been shown very much by the sad events in Glasgow last week, and now we have the Scottish Government coming in to help the local authority. So keeping going and recognising we're all in this together is hugely important. So for the Highlands and Islands, take advantage of what the Scottish Government is doing, work together and do what's best for people.
Of course. And of course, today is Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day to everyone who is celebrating today. And on this day, the Greens have announced childcare plans alongside the SNP yesterday that would potentially save 100,000. Wait. Oh my goodness, I seriously misread that. £10,000 per child. Wow. That would be very generous.
Wow, that would be good, wouldn't it?
Yes. So this would be part of the biggest expansion. Part of the biggest expansion of free childcare in a generation. So the commitment would be to roll out 1,140 hours funded childcare from children in Scotland from 6 months to 2 years old, I believe, and that would provide. I apologise. 1,140 hours funded childcare to all 2-year-olds in Scotland, and then 570 hours of funded childcare to every child from 6 months to 2 years old. And this would save about £10,000 per child over the course of 2.5 years. And the party's co-leader, Gillian Mackay, said that today is a celebration of mothers and their children, but a lot of mothers are finding things really difficult. They love their children more than anything else, but they are struggling. Everything is getting more expensive. For far too many families, the cost of a nursery is more than they are spending on their rent or mortgage payments. So, of course, childcare is a very important part that factors into couples' ability to have children. Many couples want to have children, but they cannot because it is so expensive, or housing is just. And the SNP's childcare policy was announced that will cover from 9 months old to the end of primary school by the end of the next Parliament. And this would benefit from £1,400 or £11,000 depending on the family's need, especially in what area they are living in or how many children they have. So yes, with childcare, do you think this could solve Scotland's population growth problem, or do you think more needs to be done than childcare packages?
I think more needs to be done. I mean, I'm presuming that the Greens and the SNP post-election will talk about these policies and put together what's common. But no, it's not enough. We need to have control over our economy. We need to have control over what we do to boost that economy instead of everything being drawn south, which is what happens. Basically Scotland funds the southeast of England. The north of England funds the southeast of England. That's where the draw is. That's where everything goes. You could have a whole programme about how from the time Scotland discovered oil, for example, that was frittered and wasted away and sent south to fund the UK and fill all the giant holes in the UK economy. We've ended up with a service economy. So no, independence is required to really make these differences. Childcare is a big part of boosting our economy, of course it is. But we talked about that earlier. But to do it properly, to get proper population growth, we need to be having our people stay here. I remember it was Alex Salmond once said that Scotland probably had the highest educated airport departure lounges in the world. And he may well have had a point. We talked about the Highlands and Islands. The brain drain from the Highlands and Islands is huge. We should be able to have vibrant communities in all of these places, but we don't have the ability to take the big economic decisions that would allow that to happen.
Of course. Yes, and it is a loss of culture as well from the Highlands and Islands. Young people are going to cities to seek further opportunities because there is such a lack over there. So then it means that the population can't replenish, as it is usually the older inhabitants who stay. So then the population of the Highlands and Islands eventually dwindles. I mean, before the Highland clearances, the Scottish Highlands were one of the most densely populated areas in Europe, and now they are one of the most sparsely populated. And it's not just because of the legacy of the clearances, it is because of a lack of opportunities and employment statistics and such.
There's a famous song that says once these glens were full of people, and yes, they were.
Yes.
Now they're full of sheep, if you're lucky. Aye.
Yes. And even then, sheep farming has become far less profitable recently. I mean, in the north of England, the Yorkshire Dales, which were known for their sheep farming, they are switching to either cattle farming, which is
Are they?
more
Oh, that's interesting.
Yes. Either cattle farming or to arable crop farming. So, I mean, government grants from Westminster have not really been sufficient. Farming has always been a very difficult and financially strapped industry, and I think recently it has become especially difficult for farmers to make a profit.
Yeah, there is that. It's interesting you saying that about the Yorkshire Dales. I mean, there's huge swathes of the Highlands that wouldn't be suitable for arable or
No, of
indeed
course, it's too hilly.
cattle. That's a difficult one. Yeah. It's wonderful to be up there, though, isn't it? We're so
It really
fortunate
is,
as a country to have these wonderful places.
Yeah, Scotland is really
But it would
abundant
be
in
better
natural
if there was
beauty.
plenty of people. Yeah, we are. We are. No, I'm just contemplating my annual trip to Uist, which is always a wonderful thing to be doing.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah,
I would love to go to Uist. I've been to the islands a few times, and I think
yeah.
I really need to spend more time there.
It's fine on a nice day, Iowa. Don't go in the winter.
Or with ferries as well, yeah. Travel there is always quite difficult.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, thank you very much, Linda, for joining us on the show this week. I really appreciate your input.
A pleasure. It's a shame about the blip that we had, but you know,
Of course, but
as you say, it's not an online program unless you have blips. So there you are.
of course, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, that is it for this week's Full Scottish. Before I go, I just want to remind you that at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, thank you very much. We can only exist with your support. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter, and please donate whatever you can afford. Thank you, and thank you again to our guest, Linda Fabiani. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.